All spoiler recap.
Welcome back for the all spoiler recap. I'm Julia Cunningham. Over the course of this podcast, I go through a movie beat by beat. And I have the return of my sister, Sarah Mary Cunningham, a fan favorite, to join me on this edition of the podcast. Sarah, first of all, welcome back.
Thank you. And I just need to know so I can stunt. Am I the longest running secondary guest? Like if I had more guest appearances than anyone else?
I'll have to go back and look at the record book because I think it's either Emily Higgins from Tasteless Pod, who's a really good friend of mine who is a frequent guest, you or Joe Navarre, who's also a frequent guest. It's definitely in the top three, but I'd have to go look at the numbers.
So me, Joe, and Emily are basically like podium status.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
great.
For sure.
Great.
Absolutely. Don't worry. But again, you can email me allspoilerrecap@gmail.com if you want to be a guest. And people have been emailing me recently because the podcast was off for like a year with the birth of my daughter. And so I am doing my best to keep a calendar of old school guests that have emailed me that I've kind of kept a calendar of, and new people that are emailing me, and trying to do one and the other, and keeping the podcast going. We were off last week just because we were away on vacation, and I ended up forgetting to bring my mic, and it was my own fault that we didn't have an episode last weekend. And then this week, initially, Sarah, my goal was to do the film Smile, because Smile 2 is going to be in theaters next weekend. But I got so many emails this week that I felt like, okay, we've got to cover this movie, which was a hit at Sundance. It was purchased by Netflix. It had been in the top 10, so people may have seen this movie. It's a body swap movie called It's What's Inside. Have you seen this or heard of it?
Is this the Demi Moore one?
No, that's The Substance, which also people have been
I want to go
me.
see that. I want to go see that, so don't spoiler recap for me. I have not heard about this movie, and as a former film major who goes to see every movie at the Angelica, I actually feel like an idiot that I did not know about this award-winning Sundance movie.
Well, it was one that was just like an audience rave movie, and Netflix scooped it up for $17 million or something like that. And it was a top 10 hit, but I think it's already made its way out of the top 10, although I think it has strong word of mouth and sort of 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, but then 65% or 70% on audience. So I think it's a little split. I really enjoyed it. And side note, a lot of people have been emailing me about The Substance, which I have seen in theaters, but it's so intense that I need to wait until, honestly, it's on streaming to take the amount of detailed notes that I need to do to give it justice. And if you've seen it, you know how important it is to nail it because it's so visual and over the top. So just stand by for The Substance, but don't worry, it will be happening. But we're going to talk about It's What's Inside. Now, normally, we do various characters' names based on other projects that I know them from. And there are actors in here that are known. Devin Terrell, who starred as Barack Obama in the film Barry. We meet Brittany O'Grady, who was in season 1 of The White Lotus. I'm basically, because this movie is like an 8-person body swap, and I'll explain it when we get there, it's going to be so confusing that I'm keeping us pretty much at character names, except for Paula from White Lotus, who was the friend of Sydney Sweeney in season 1 of White Lotus. And I don't normally do this. So, Sarah, people were emailing me because they were all like, this movie is so cool, but also so confusing that I need you to basically it to me. It was basically the emails I received this past week. So I was like, challenge accepted. This is basically following season 1 of Game of Thrones. So
this is like Mulholland Drive, but for Gen Z. Oh my God, I'm ready.
But that's why I was like, you know what? I want to do it with my sister because she'll have patience with me. And Sarah, tell me if you have questions along the ride. So right away.
And if I don't know what you're talking about, I'll just be like, I don't know what the hell you are talking about.
I know. That's why this is this is going to be
I wish
maybe
I had my notebook, but I'm too lazy to get out of bed.
Don't get up. I want to be able to be visually descriptive enough that you understand what's going on within this movie. And this might be my piece de resistance if I can nail it.
Okay.
So right away, we get a Netflix Presents with a Such production. And each key word is in deep red. Of course, our Netflix, the word Such. And it's maybe in a sans font, like a Gill Sans font, I guess you would say. And lights are flying towards us, like trying to capture like a firework up close. We're seeing greens and reds and purples, these balls of light. And as more production companies come through, the keywords are shifting to blues and greens. And we start getting this almost Charlie Brown. Is it music? Is it dialogue in the back? Wah, 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 sort of sounds. And the camera begins to zoom out from these almost firework light coloring, where it starts to now look almost like a hurricane on the Doppler. Do you know what I mean? Like it looks like that kind of shades of color in a circular pattern. And as we continue to pull away and see that we're actually out of a jack on a headboard, like on a soundboard, excuse me, from like a headphone jack, and we're getting more muffled sounds, but now clearly it wasn't quite music. It's actually muffled conversation. Where you can almost, you can't make out words, but you can tell based on the tone and the peaks and valleys that people are having maybe an argument. The soundboard or whatever it is starts to light up and shake. And as these muffled voices are getting a little bit closer and louder, we sort of see, instead of the headphone jack, almost this dial in the center that has light coming through it, almost like a lens in the middle of this project. There's some sort of intense light, and there's an intense shake. There's passion clearly behind these muffled voices, is how it almost sounds. And almost like that, the board is shoved. It goes quiet. We then see in the reflection of that lens the chest of a body. We can't see who it is, but seemingly a man who shuts some sort of old suitcase and snaps it closed, and we cut to black. That's our beginning of the film. We cut to a vertical TikTok video from Nikki V, who's verified. The video has been up for about 19 hours, and the video is hearted over 11,000 times. And it's Nikki sharing a dating video. She is Australian in real life. She was in The 100, this actress, but she'll be referred to as Nikki within our recap. And listening to this TikTok video is Brittany O'Grady, who we know as Paula from season 1 of White Lotus, who was the girl who was like friends with Sydney Sweeney, who was like the friend staying with them, banging the hotel employee and convinces him to
helping
rob
to convince
the family.
crime. Yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
And her character's named Shelby, but we'll actually refer to her as Paula from White Lotus because that's more fun. And the TikTok is saying, oh, you should try spontaneity, you should try new things, and you should spice it up. Don't forget to do that. And seemingly, Paula from White Lotus is trying on a wig to spice up what is going on, whatever her relationship is or whatever. She's putting on this deep red lipstick. She's voicing to herself in the mirror, hey, cutie, like over and over again. And as she emerges in this wig and deep red lip and like sexy bra underwear, her boyfriend is seemingly in bed or on a couch watching the exact same TikTok of Nikki. But as we scan the tabs on his computer, they're all like various intense porn sites and porn tabs that are open. And she walks in on him, of course, jerking off. And they have this back and forth where he was like, no, I was working. And she's like, you were supposed to save your sexual energy for me. And she says, I have this wig on because you said that would be like kind of fun and sexy. And he was like, oh, I mean, I didn't necessarily mean that seriously. I just thought we were like talking. And then he's like, no, but nonetheless, like I'm excited about this. And she starts to kind of like then make her way, even though he was being weird about it and sort of making her
and basically being one giant walking red flag.
Totally. And that there's clearly intimacy issues in their relationship. And so she starts to like slowly be like, okay, well, I'm going for it. And like making her way, sexy walking towards him. And we learn that his name is Cyrus. He's the actor James Morosini, but we're calling him his character name Cyrus. And the camera is just continuously flashing back and forth between her sexy-faced, beautiful, making her way towards him, and him just like shark-eyed, basically. And as they cut back and forth in the camera really quick to show their different reactions, she ends up just stopping and going, you know what? Never mind. And he's like, no, what? I know, I want to do it. And she's like, well, show some enthusiasm then. Be encouraging. Be like, wow, you're hot. Something. And they get into this back and forth, and she finally claps to break the tension and goes, I don't think we should go to this wedding, especially if our relationship is like this. And he gets super upset. He's like, we can't cancel last minute. she's like, I'm in this wig for you. And he's like, well, don't be upset with me because of the wig. And it's all this back and forth argument in that moment. And we immediately jump to our title cards. The first one is bright red, and it says, it's. Green card, what's. Blue card, inside. With this light glow at the center of each word, almost like coming across a TV screen. And each word becomes significantly larger to the point that the word inside barely fits in the screen, this bold white font. And at the bottom of each card is copyright 2024. It's What's Inside, LLC, all rights reserved. And we cut to this photo montage of this happy couple on Instagram, seemingly the couple getting married, with captions like, can't wait to marry this nerd tomorrow, Rufia, because it's what we learn is Ruben, their friend from college, and his fiancee, Sophia, and that's where everyone is gathering for their wedding. And everyone is reacting on socials to the big day of Ruben and Sophia, including Paula from White Lotus and Cyrus, who were driving, and she's scrolling the hashtag. And now the way the film is shot, and another reason why I say to go see it, because visually they just do a good job of having a lot of split screen. So it'll be Cyrus driving, talking endlessly, her not listening, but obsessively like staring at, Instagram, scrolling, and we're just seeing the reflection of it in her eyeball. And at the bottom, almost like a lower third, we're just like scrolling through all the comments and the captions. It was a good way to incorporate the visual of social media.
Yeah.
So now Cyrus is droning on in the car while she scrolls, and she gets to his page, and his username is Cyrus the Virus. And he writes in a group photo, throwback to college, he writes, reunion incoming, hashtag TBT, hashtag Rufia on this friend group photo. And she immediately clicks on the girl who had done the TikTok. So clearly that girl, Nikki, was their friend from college. And she goes to her page, and she has 2.3 million followers, and she starts scrolling through all of her pictures of her like this hot, beautiful influencer. And of course, Cyrus is posting like fire emoji and like all these things like, hey, cutie, and him writing back like fire emoji and commenting on all the photos. But clearly she's part of the friend group, and who knows what the dynamic is between all of them.
But Cyrus being messy with that digital footprint.
I know, exactly. Take note.
Take note.
And now this is shot with a picture alongside the Instagram with the scroll at the bottom. And we're seeing, again, like all those comments coming up. And to then her seeing, like within seconds, thousands of people liking the photograph of this girl, Nikki. She poses by like a road sign. She filters it. She goes back and forth. She takes like 30 selfies. She gets like all obsessed over which one to pick, filters it, posts it, starts making a caption, deletes it, rewrites it, posts it. And then after she gets back into the car and clearly some time has passed, all of a sudden she realized it only has 2 likes and deletes the photo. So clearly also projecting. Only two. And only has, but like seemingly just an everyday person with like maybe 400 followers, nothing compared to someone with 2.3 million where you're just going to have an ambush
poor Paula
of likes.
Couldn't even get like 12 likes though. It was like 2
Exactly.
likes.
Even though
Paula.
she's obviously beautiful. So how dare. So they're driving through the woods in the fog, and we learn that the bride isn't meeting up, that this is literally just their college friend group, which we basically saw in the photograph that Cyrus had posted. It's just this group dinner that they're doing the night before. And she's like, don't you think that's weird that Sophia's not going to do this dinner with us? And he's like, no, like they already did the rehearsal and she's doing stuff with her family. This is like what he requested. His like, he didn't have a bachelor party. He just wanted to do this like one friend night group dinner, and it would be super fun. And everyone's excited. And so she's like, okay. Meanwhile, she pops a Xanax because you can tell she's like not excited. And we learn that Ruben's mom, the groom, was some sort of like visual artist and passed away around the time that they were in college, was a very successful artist, has this like very old school East Coast brick mansion-y type place that Ruben turned into almost like a museum of his mom's work. So it's not like he lives there. He allows like people to go see what is specifically vagina art and uterus art. And it's all like giant sculptures of vaginas and uterus. And the whole house is like bonkers, where it's kind of got like old school, like, East Coast WASP looking stuff, and then super modern, bizarre artwork all over the house.
Yeah.
So it's raining. It's like East Coast wealth type vibes, and everyone feels on edge because you can tell that there's obviously some unfinished business within the group. At one point, as she's walking up, like a bird flies into her face as she's walking up to the door, and she's like, "A bird!" Like flailing around. And Cyrus is like, "You're fine. Let's get inside." Like he's so eager just to see everyone that they go inside. And as soon as everyone shows up and we start meeting the friend group, they all are like, "Oh my gosh, you guys got married, right?" And seemingly Cyrus and Paula have been together since college ended, not during college, but most likely after college. And they're like, "Oh no, we haven't." And they're all just kind of chit-chatting and they're offering snacks and stuff. And Nikki's like, "No, I have a peanut allergy. I can't have that."
Of course she does.
Totally. And she's also like, "That's why I work with a cashew brand because of my peanut allergy."
Oh, Nikki.
And we learned that their one friend, Maya, went on a Buddhist retreat. Their other friend, Dennis, is some sort of like trust fund kid in the friend group. So we're all kind of like getting to know like what everyone's been up to. And you can tell that like Maya and Brooke arrived together. They're still friends. And like Nikki's in touch with them. And so it's kind of like some are not splintered, but some have just not kept up as much as some of the others within this friend group. So as they're all chit-chatting, Cyrus breaks from the group and goes out to find Reuben, the groom, who's barbecuing out on this giant brick deck with this giant light-up sign that says trauma. And they're talking about the wedding again. It's all like sort of modern art and things like that. And it's revealed that this guy, Forbes, who is this kind of black sheep of the friend group, was actually invited to the wedding. So when we saw the throwback photo, it was this group of 8, but seemingly we only see the 7, and we didn't know what was going on with him. And Reuben, the groom, says, "Yeah, I invited him. I never heard back. And I don't even know if he's going to show up." And they're all like, "Oh, wow, but you invited him. Oh, interesting." And Paula from White Lotus is like, "Yeah, what's the story there? Like, I don't even know." Like, it seems like she was maybe on the fringe of the friend group and was more brought in then, maybe because of her relationship with Cyrus. And they're like, "What's that story?" So we get this whoosh, whoosh sound as Maya and Brooke start unveiling the story of Forbes from this black and white photo. And Forbes is played by David Thompson, who was in the Gotham TV series and other stuff. He would look familiar to you, but we'll refer to him as Forbes. And he apparently was brilliant. He got the freshman grant. He was a genius. He would host game nights. So some people called him Game Boy, but they also were like, he was weird. And he was also wild, and he would get really effed up. And one of them is like, I think he would also get like angry. And the other one would be like, "No, I think he just partied too much." And it was sort of like they're remembering him, but there's elements of unreliable narrator as they're both kind of telling the story. And one of them says, no, I think he did have a temper. But anyways, it's kind of all like being pieced together, this story. And apparently Dennis was having a birthday party. And he's the one who greeted everyone at the door. And he's really handsome. He's really tatted up. He is a trust fund kid with no job and seemingly kind of the brat, but also the playboy of the friend group. And Forbes brought his teenage sister, who was still in high school at the time. Her name is Beatrice. He brought her to the party. And the girls are like, "Oh, and she was obsessed with Dennis. Don't you remember that?" And they were like, "Oh, yeah, what was that?" And one of the women is like, "Yeah, I think Beatrice was like telling people that she was dating Dennis, even though she was in high school. And Dennis was actually dating Nikki at the time, who was the TikToker." And so there's no
so
way.
This friend group is messy as hell.
Exactly.
Messy.
And so they were together at this party, and Beatrice like freaked out seeing them, and she attacked Nikki. And Dennis and Forbes got into a huge fight because of it. It literally led to a fist fight, and cops showed up, and Dennis got in trouble, but Forbes ended up getting expelled because he brought his high school age sister to the party on campus or whatever, and she had been drinking and was drunk and all these issues, and she ended up in a mental institution. They're all like trying to piece together this story that seems to be getting more outlandish as it goes. And they're like, and then Forbes moved to California. He like works in tech, and no one ever heard from him since. They all sit down for dinner. And just as a reminder, because we're getting to know all of our key characters, Paula from White Lotus, Dennis, who's the rich guy who got into the fight with Forbes, Nikki is our TikToker, Cyrus is our whack boyfriend of Paula, Maya is our Buddhist retreat girl, and Brooke is an artist who has like the Sia haircut where half her hair is red and the other half is black, and she's like an artist. And then we have Ruben, the groom, who was Devin Terrell, aka Barack Obama in the film Barry. That's how I know him.
Right,
So
right,
that
right.
is like our group. So everyone's talking, and Brooke's telling everyone about her art, and Nikki is talking, of course, about her influencing. And everyone's like, oh, and Cyrus, like, we always notice you liking Nikki's post. And at one point, as they're all talking at the table, we see Ruben, our groom, literally laser focus in on Maya, who's the Buddhist retreat girl. And it's obvious that, like, he has feelings for her, but is obviously also getting married tomorrow. So we don't know exactly
Men.
where that stands. And Ruben stands up and says, I want to do a toast. 8 years ago, my mom died, and I had to come up here to figure out what to do with this house, and I didn't know what to do with her stuff, and I didn't know what to do with her art. And you all showed up that day, and it literally meant the most to me. And I just realized that you guys are just such dear friends. And he jokes around with everyone, and they all agree that, like, even though we've kind of separated or have gone on to other lives or whatever else, like, friends forever type vibe. And then in that moment, knock, knock, knock. Forbes is at the window. He walks around, and in the front of the door, he walks in and is like bathed in blue light. And you just know trouble's coming. Even though he's a seemingly nerd, kind of pale, puffy faced, where you wouldn't expect something sinister out of him, but you just know bathed in that blue, you're like, trouble is coming.
He is an Elon Musk in training.
So Ruben immediately runs up and hugs him. And, he's glowing, and he's kind of, as we see Ruben embracing him, the camera is on Forbes' face, and he's looking around, side-eyeing to the room, kind of like registering who's here. Who do I know? What are the people that are at the group? And the music, though, as they're embracing, is very reminiscent of like Ted Stryker and Elaine as they're falling in love in the montage in Airplane. Like, it's really cheese over the top. Like, the music beats in this movie are very funny and like very on point, and sometimes on the nose in a way that's like hilarious. So the music right now is like, oh, like this really romantic.
Like when Frank Stallone would make all the music for Sylvester Stallone's dance movies, and it was like the same syncopated like synth over and over again.
Exactly.
Yes, we love it.
So now, in the hand of Forbes is this giant old green suitcase that's like mid-thigh to mid-calf. And Cyrus walks up to Forbes, who is opening this giant suitcase, again, bathed in greens and blues. And he says, oh, how are you? And like, how's Paula from White Lotus? And like, aren't you guys married? And like, what's going on with you two? And he's like, oh my God, no. And like, we've been having some issues. There was this wig thing, and he just like is awkwardly sort of like talking and over explaining. And you can tell that Forbes is just sort of like smiling, like, okay. And he goes, like last week she suggested like a dance lesson, but like, I mean, I don't dance, and I don't know why she would say that. And so, they go on and on and on. And Forbes is just staring with like a half smile, just like, okay, stop talking. When Ruben finally breaks it up and is like, Forbes, I've got a joint for you with your name on it. And like, sings to get him to come into the room. And he joins the room.
Oh my God, so cringe.
And everyone is like passing the joint around, and they're sitting around, they're chit-chatting. And Forbes sits down, and everyone's like, what's the vibe, dude? Like, are you going to go wild? Are you drinking tonight? And attention, of course, immediately goes to this giant green suitcase that has now been laid out in the center of this circular sit-down. And he's like, well, I thought I would bring a game. And they're all like, yes, game night. Because remember, he was known as Game Boy.
Game Boy.
Because he would do various game nights. And he says, before I open the suitcase, this needs to stay in this room type thing. No phones out or anything. Okay. And they all laugh, and they're like, good luck with Nikki. And she's like, stop. And Forbes continues. So my team and I have been working on this for 5 years. And I could explain it, but the best thing for you to do is to just try it yourself. And they're all like, okay.
Thus.
Forbes opens the green old suitcase, and what looks like, again, a mixing board with like buttons and lights and switches and plugs for headphones, and it powers up, and Forbes says, everyone gets one of these. And the camera is behind Forbes as he hands out 2 electrodes to each person and says, put them on your temples. Now the camera moves over Forbes, showing the machine, and it's this deep green suitcase open, and it's actually deep as in the box in it, but there's like a light glowing underneath. And there's the 8 electrodes, so 4 people on one side, 4 people on the other side of the box. And again, buttons, there's a set of keys, there's jacks for plugs. And on the top right corner are a series of jacks with shorter wires that will just go almost like the old switchboards when people would be making phone calls. And there are 4 rows of 5 jacks, and the first 2 columns are filled. And Forbes starts slotting the wires into the jacks with no rhyme or reason. And we all of a sudden get a shot like the Brady Bunch montage of the various photos, right? The 9 photos. And where it would say the Brady Bunch or Alice is the machine in the middle. And he says, okay, ready? And everyone's just like talking and laughing when all of a sudden he hits the giant red button. Boosh! All of a sudden, Cyrus starts talking to the group. The electrodes are on. They're all like, okay, everyone's freaking out. They're staring at their hands. He's like, don't move, because now Forbes is in the body of Cyrus. Everyone is freaking out because they're realizing with the hit of that giant red button, everyone else is in someone else's body. And they're all of a sudden getting that, like, what is happening? So everyone's freaking out. They're staring at their hands. They're screaming, what the fuck? And Cyrus, the body of Cyrus, but it's actually Forbes in him, says 3, 2, 1, and hits the red button again. And all of a sudden everyone is like, oh, whoa. And he's like, trippy, huh? And all of a sudden, like, music kicks in. And the camera is inside the group, and it just starts spinning as everyone's like, what just happened? I was inside your body. That was so crazy. What did I just do? And everyone's kind of coming to terms with the fact that they just body swapped with someone within the group, that they all start screaming. And Forbes is like, you're all okay. You're all okay. And the camera continues to spin until it's like violently turning. And we cut to like Ruben's hands, like nervously tapping on the table. And they're still trying to wrap their head around what just happened. And Forbes says, well, if you think of your brain as a hard drive, then this is just transferring the files. And they all start asking, they're like, how many people have done this before? And like, what are you doing with it? He says, I can't really get into that. It's actually pretty top secret. And Cyrus is like, no, what are you doing with it here tonight? Like, why? And why, if it's top secret, why is it at the party? And Forbes says, well, I just was like so super surprised to get the invite. And they all, I used to like care about you guys, and I just didn't know if I should come. And they're all like, look, we wanted you to be here. And he says, we used to play this game with my work, my team. We would all play like Mafia or Werewolf, but with the machine. We would all swap bodies, and then we'd have to guess who's in whose body. Ruben, having known briefly he was in somebody else's body, looks over at Maya, the Buddhist artist who he's secretly in love with, and he goes, let's do it. I'm down. And Maya, who obviously has feelings for Ruben too, is like, same. And the whole group starts to debate. Like Paula from White Lotus is like, I don't know if this is safe. Are there side effects? And Forbes claims no, and then pretends to have like a full breakdown. Is like, no, there's no side effects. And like, there are rules. The group's like, I don't know. I don't know if this is a good idea. And she like begs Cyrus. She's like, don't do this. And she's like, I think it's weird that he did this without telling us what we were doing. And Cyrus is like, just try it. Who cares?
Oh, Cyrus.
He sucks.
Yeah, Cyrus. Really?
So Forbes says, okay, there are rules. Everyone gets a Polaroid photo of who you are. And they, as a series, are like taking everyone's photo and writing their names on the bottom of the Polaroid. Then he says, as people guess, if they are correct, the Polaroid gets pinned to the body and you lose the round. If you guess incorrectly, you have to reveal who you are and you're also out of the round. But they're like, but how would we know if someone's lying? And Forbes is like, well, if anyone's lying, I would know because I'm programming the machine. And I'm also like, quote, the dungeon master. So I cannot guess and I cannot win, and I will keep it fair since, I know it all. So I can't win or lose. And the dungeon master can end the game whenever or when the round is done and we all have to switch back. Paula from White Lotus is like freaked out, but she's like, okay, fine. So they all sit back down. They all put their electrodes on, and we see the person that is Forbes, writing down, something on a piece of paper. We see the wires moving, and all of a sudden, 3, 2, 1, click. We see Ruben opening his eyes. We get a black title card. Round 1. So now Brooke, the Sia-haired girl who has the red and black hair, jumps to her feet immediately and screams and is like, ah! Everyone immediately is like, well, that's obviously Paula from White Lotus. She was freaked the F out, and they all laugh and they confirm. It's like, okay, Paula is in the body of Brooke. And she's like, I'm actually calm about it. And they're like, is that because Brooke is high as hell? And they're all laughing. And so then they put the Polaroid of Paula onto the body of Brooke, the Sia-haired girl. We then cut to everyone just staring at the mirror, and they're touching their face, and whoever is Nikki is throwing their hair aside, and they're just can't believe what they're looking at and whatever. And we get a scan over the Polaroid. The camera gives us a little bit of a trick because we as the audience right now, similarly to them, only know that Paula is in Brooke. Mm-hmm. It scans over a Polaroid, and we see the name, turn into the lower box of the chyron, the lower third. So we can kind of see who's who. They're giving us, the audience, a tip. So we see the bottom of the Polaroid, Cyrus, the awful boyfriend of Paula from White Lotus, and it goes over to Ruben. So we know Cyrus is in the body of Ruben.
Right.
And Ruben stands up and is starts to pull down his pants to try and see who, where Ruben actually is. And the body of Cyrus jumps up and is like, don't you dare pull my D out. So then they, of course, realize, okay, Ruben the groom is inside the body of Cyrus. They guessed correctly. So now Cyrus has on the Polaroid of Ruben. The body of Nikki laughs when Ruben informs his body of his D, and they immediately are like, oh my gosh, Maya, the Buddhist, is inside Nikki. Correct. So kind of from their own fumblings, they're easily kind of matching people up. So they're all like, okay. So now we already know Paula is in Brooke's body, and she takes another hit of the joint. And the character, the body of Dennis, goes, okay, Shelbo, which is the nickname Cyrus would call her. Okay, Paula from White Lotus. And they're all like, oh, Cyrus. That's Cyrus, obviously. He picks up the Polaroid. Now, the thing is we know that Cyrus isn't in the body of Dennis. We know that Cyrus, the awful boyfriend, because the camera told us, is in the body of Ruben. We know Dennis is lying and therefore must be Forbes. So Dennis just stares over at Ruben, waiting to see if he says anything. And Ruben, who is actually Cyrus, is sort of doesn't know what to do in this situation. So then the group starts to get up and wander around. And our real Cyrus, in the body of Ruben, walks up to Dennis, a.k.a. Forbes, and is on his phone texting and stuff. And he's like, Forbes, what are you doing? And he's like, I thought you were Forbes, and smiles and walks away. And he follows after him and is like, no, but what do you, I don't understand. And why you're in charge? Why are you lying? And he's like, well, you said you wanted something new opportunities, and you wanted to have fun and whatever else. Forbes.
Careful what you wish for.
And he taps him on the chest and he walks away. So now Ruben, a.k.a. Cyrus, although everyone thinks he's Forbes, walks around the weird vagina art house, and he's shamelessly running around and walking, and he runs into Nikki, who we know, Maya the Buddhist, is in her body. And they're in this weird mirrored room, and she's like, I'm just figuring out if blondes have more fun, and they have this really flirtatious exchange. And Maya, as Nikki, reveals that she at one point had a fling with Ruben and that she still has feelings, which makes sense because clearly Ruben and Maya have been making eyes at each other and whatever else. But she thinks it's Forbes. It's actually Cyrus. And we know Cyrus has some sort of weird crush or hang up on Nikki. So Cyrus starts making out with Nikki. Nikki is actually Maya, who has a crush on Ruben. Cyrus is actually Ruben, has a crush on Nikki. So it's like this kind of weird, confusing, making out with each other for different reasons. And they make out, they're bathed in blue, and then every once in a while it would morph into the color of red, and we would see the actual souls or bodies who are actually there. So we're seeing Cyrus and Maya make out, and she's saying things like, do you still think about me? And he says, yes. And would you leave her for me? And he says, yes, because she's acting like it's Ruben, you know, and having this, like, I'm making out with the guy I think I'm in love with or whatever. So the makeout stops when the body of Ruben, i.e., Cyrus, like, gets up against some glass and he cuts himself. In that moment, the body of Brooke, who is the Buddhist, who is the Sia-haired girl, with Paula's body inside, his girlfriend walks in and is like, oh, what are you doing? And they're like, this is so weird. And so she's like, we're all back in the living room. And so they all start walking back. And as Nikki starts to leave, Ruben, who she thinks is Forbes, is like, do you want to, like, hang out? And she's like, oh, you were so creepy. This is just a game. And, like, walks away from him. And he's like, no, but you said the game was hot like 10 seconds ago. And she's like, ew, stop. She's like, out-of-body experiences are like true objective judgment in the eyes of Buddha. Get away from me.
Oh, my God. Of course she came with all that knowledge.
and he's like, I was just being Ruben. She's like, ugh, gross. Walks away. So now Ruben, a.k.a. Cyrus, but everyone thinks is Forbes, hears music down the way, and he goes into this random room. And Paula from White Lotus is having fun in the body of Brooke. She's, like, dancing. She's high as hell. And the body of Cyrus has Dennis, the douchebag kind of, like, hotshot trust fund kid. And they're laughing about Cyrus and his porn and how he won't dance. And Ruben, a.k.a. Cyrus, is, like, getting all upset because he's like, I want to end the round. Stop making fun of me type energy and all that kind of stuff. And they're, like, you know, just messing around and having fun, ultimately. And they all head back into the major room. And back at the machine, they decide, okay, we're ending round one. Basically, everyone was figured out. And Forbes, who we know is not actually Ruben, sits down at the machine. Dennis, who is actually Forbes, sits next to him and is like, hands him the piece of paper and is like, line these up. And he's like watching him and he like nods, basically like, okay, you did it correct. Now, remind me, Sarah, that I noticed an Easter egg when I was rewatching this on this piece of paper. So remind me if I don't remember at the very end, because I don't want to spoil anything too early of spoiling.
Okay, I feel like pressure, but I'm going to rise to the
I made a note to myself at the very end.
Egg. I'm tapping it into my head. Okay,
but everyone take note that there's a minor Easter egg in this moment, especially if you go to watch in your own time.
Well, now we have to get it right because you just told everyone there's an Easter egg, and then if we don't remember the Easter egg at the end, like you will have.
No, I will. I made a note. Yeah, okay, I will remember, but I'm just saying, know that there's an Easter egg. So take a lock of this moment of like him looking at this picture of like the directions of everything.
Okay.
So they hit the button, 3, 2, 1, and they all turn back to their real bodies, and the real Forbes winks at the real Cyrus. Like, wasn't that fun? We kind of had like a moment and a comeuppance, but you can tell that Cyrus weirdly, even though he made out with Nikki because he could, you can tell he's a little freaked out by what Forbes just did. And right. Everyone starts chanting, round 2, round 2, round 2. And they're all like, that was so fun, that was so crazy. And everyone has a specific reason why. And Paula from White Lotus was like, I just had the best time. It was so fun. I think I needed that. And like, it was just fun to like project to somebody else. And Cyrus is like low-key losing his mind. And he's like mad that Paula's having fun. Dennis goes up to Forbes, who's bathed in blues and purples. And Dennis is like, hey, that was really cool. Thanks for bringing the game. And I know we haven't really talked since college or since that night. And like, for real, I feel bad. And he's like, we both do. And you know, everything we said about that night, we never would have said if we knew it was going to get you expelled. And Forbes is like, what do you mean, we? Who's we? And he's like, Ruben and I. Like, I'm not trying to speak on his behalf or anything. And he goes, no, you're good. No, it's fine. And he's like, but Ruben too? And you can tell Forbes seems like genuinely bummed by this, that like the guy who actually invited him, who he thought was his friend, helped rat him out or get him expelled. And he goes, look, it's just like what we had said to the dean, all that drama with your sister and stuff. And we were just like, we were so young, we were dumb. And I really do feel bad about it. I just want to make sure we were cool. I mean, you, me, and Ruben and Beatrice, your sister, all of us. I hope like everything is okay. And Forbes just looks at him, but is like, yeah, man, like, yeah, whatever. In the distance, we're still hearing round two, round two, round two. Forbes is like, all right, fine. I've got one more in me, but here's the thing. The machine can do one more round, then it has to charge for a full 24 hours. So we can do one full round, and then we have to stop. Cyrus announces he wants to sit this round out. And Dennis gets annoyed by this, and they get into an argument. And there's obviously like pent-up anger between them from the past. And finally, Cyrus reveals to Paula, like, what happened. He's like, look, why I don't want to do it is because I think Forbes is weird, and he totally lied to me, and he actually was in the other body, and like, I don't know, I just feel like freaked out by it. And she like does not care because she's now having fun, and she's like, finally, I'm having fun, and you're the one like anxiety ridden, so like, it's a game, get over it. So she's annoyed, and she's like, you convinced me to play, and now I'm having fun, and now because you're not having fun, you're trying to like ruin the whole thing.
Just like he ruined the wig. He ruined the wig. Now he's ruining the game.
And like made her feel bad after like he suggested it. So he finally is like, okay, fine. We can do it, but we have to have a signal to each other. I need to know which body you're in. Fine, whatever. And he's like, no, okay, we have to do like, I'm going to touch my eyebrow. Okay. And she's like, okay. And he's like, no, well, you do it too. Do it. So she like flicks her hair. And he's like, no, subtly. And he makes her do it like 3 times until she like subtly touches her brow.
Oh my God, the control freak of this guy.
He's like so up in it. So now everyone sits back around the table and they go 3, 2, 1, click. Now we know Cyrus is in the body of Forbes. He immediately starts touching his brow casually. So we know he's in that body, and he looks around. He's looking at every single person. Everyone's, of course, looking at each other, just like immediate reaction. No one is touching their brow. So he's like super annoyed. Black card, round 2. So we cut to Nikki posting a selfie with the caption, vibes, spiral emoji, spiral emoji, spiral emoji. And she's in this like bathroom with like crazy lighting. And then she changes the emojis to like spiral eyes, and then deletes the spiral eyes and adds kisses, and then deletes the word vibes, and then just hits send. And Nikki in the mirror whispers, oh, hey, cutie. So now we know in the body of Nikki is Paula from White Lotus, because she was doing that in the wig at the beginning of the movie. Hey, cutie.
Right.
She's in Nikki's body. And we know.
Again?
No. This is her first time in Nikki's body. In the last time, Paula was instantly in the red and black-haired Sia girl's body, high as hell.
High as hell, having fun. That's right. Yeah.
Exactly. And this, after, we know that she was enamored by Nikki and projecting her own insecurities onto Nikki's own TikTok and Instagram and things. And so she's pumped to be in Nikki's body and like can't stop staring at herself. And she posts a photo, and within 41 seconds, it has 1,500 likes. So she's instantly like given that gratification. Meanwhile, the bodies of Cyrus and Ruben are like high as kites. And Nikki, aka Paula, like walks up like super confident and beautiful, unlike anything we've seen from her yet. And they're facing her, and she's talking to them. And in another room, the bodies of like Brooke and Dennis and Paula are all staring at each other. But the Dennis body zooms in on Maya. So we know that Dennis, who's like the douchebag with all of the tattoos, who's the trust fund kid, who just apologized to Forbes, that he is actually Ruben. That Ruben, the groom, is in the body of Dennis. And he zooms in on Maya. Maya, we learn it's actually the body of Brooke. So Maya is the woman that he was in love with, the Buddhist temple kind of girl, the retreat girl, saging the house and everything. But Brooke, who is the Sia-haired colored girl, is inside of Maya. And we know that at some point he had a fling with basically everyone within the friend group. And we know that Brooke is like more than willing and wanting to hook up with Ruben. But also Ruben wants to hook up with the body of Maya because that's who he's in love with. He's just in the body of Dennis. And everyone is like, we're more than willing to hook up. So they go to check out, quote, the roof. Meanwhile, Forbes, our dungeon master, is the body of himself, but Cyrus is inside of him. And he goes to try and like figure out who everybody is. He finally is like, okay, I know it has to be Nikki because everyone else is like totally not responding to my eyebrow thing. So he goes and like collects Nikki, aka Paula from White Lotus. And she's super upset with him because she's like, I don't want to have to reveal. This is a game. And he's like rubbing his eyebrow. And she's like, fine. Like rubs her eyebrow. He's like, look, I'm just like freaked out by the whole thing. I think this is weird. And she, knowing that Cyrus is into her, i.e. Nikki, all of a sudden is like, maybe this is the excitement that we need. And she goes up and starts making out with Forbes. So this is Paula and Nikki making out with Forbes, who Cyrus is in him. Cyrus, of course, is like stoked because in a way he's making out with Nikki, he himself, his body, but he's also, again, feeling bad because he's like weirdly all of a sudden having this moral compass. Meanwhile, on the roof, the body of Dennis, which has Ruben in it, is making out with Maya, which has the body of Brooke in it. And they make their way to this borderline dilapidated roof deck and they flirt and they're acknowledging who they actually are. Like Ruben's like, it's me, I'm Ruben and Dennis. And Brooke is like, it's me and Maya, but I'm down because she pines for Ruben, even though Ruben is pining for Maya. And we keep going back and forth between Cyrus as Forbes making out, and then we see the Dennis and Maya bodies making out. And he's finally like, I'm freaked out. We have to stop. And she's mad. They get into this argument and he declares, I'm telling everyone I'm the Forbes body right now. I'm declaring that here's who everybody is. And I'm going to say we're ending the game. And she's like, don't. Meanwhile, Dennis is having sex with Maya up on this roof, aka Brooke. And they're just totally like in this freak show hookup right now because it's Ruben and Dennis and he's having sex with the body of who he's into, but the girl in that body wants to be banging him. So it's just like absolutely insane that it's happening. Everyone is inside while Cyrus is trying to end the entire round, being like, this is too out of control. This is crazy. They're making accusations of who is who when all of a sudden the couple banging on the broken, dilapidated balcony, it collapses. And the body of Dennis and the body of Maya fall off the roof and get impaled by the vagina art.
No, oh my God, I was not prepared for that. Oh my God.
Literally, this particular piece of art looks like, I guess, a uterus with like arrows coming out of it, and they're like,
I was gonna say, because I was like, uteri are kind of uteruses, uteri. They're like roundish, circular. So I was like, what did they impale on? But okay, arrows out. Okay, got it.
And so there are arrows.
Thank you for clarifying that to me.
Exactly, almost like arrows in a heart, and yet it's like a uterus. I believe. It's a hard image to exactly identify. Everyone all of a sudden is like, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And then they're like, well, who's Forbes? Like, put me back in my body. But then everyone's like, but how do you put people back into dead bodies? Everyone's freaking out because Cyrus is Dennis, whose body is dead, right? Because Dennis is in Cyrus. The body of Ruben, whose soul is dead, is in Forbes. The body of Paula from White Lotus is Maya, whose body is dead. The body of Forbes is Cyrus. The body of Nikki is Paul, as it goes on and on. So there's, like, if you put Ruben back into his own body, you can't. His soul is nowhere to be found. But if you put Dennis, who's alive, into the body of dead Dennis, what happens? You can't.
Right. You can't.
So it's very confusing. This is a true situation.
This is a true situation.
Yeah, Dennis is in the body of Cyrus. He doesn't want to go back into his dead body. So, like, who gets to go back into that body?
Fair.
It's very confusing.
very complicated.
And then like Paula is in Nikki and is loving it and doesn't want to give up that body. You know, so there's a lot of sort of situationships, as Sarah just said, where it's like, what do you do in this situation with half of them are dead and they don't have bodies to go back into?
Messy.
They're also all talking about it like, well, how do we do this? And like, what do we do about the dead bodies? And like, we should call the cops. Forbes is like, absolutely not. Because if we do that, by the way, he's in the body of Ruben, the groom. He says, if we call the cops, they're going to take my machinery. We can't. Nikki, who's actually Paula from White Lotus, is like, yeah, but what about like your team? Do they even know that you have the machinery? And they're all like, we won't go to jail for you. This is so crazy. And everyone's like, let's just go back inside and switch. But Cyrus, the body, is Dennis, who doesn't have a body to go to. The Paula body from White Lotus has Brooke in it. She doesn't have a body to go to. That body's dead. So they're all like, we can't switch back. This is like a rebirth. Like, I'm Paula now. I'm Cyrus now.
Messy, complicated.
And Cyrus, who's in the body of Forbes, says, look, I'm sorry, you just have to go back, but like, you have to give me my body back, and you have to go into the body of Ruben because he's an open body. And Cyrus, which is Dennis, is like, that's not fair. Why do you get to decide? And they start getting to this fight, and they're like, you're a little bitch. And he's like, you're a little bitch. And they start going back and forth arguing. And Dennis in Cyrus is like, well, you can start over in Forbes. And he's like, well, I don't want to start over in Forbes. Like, I have my body. And he's like, I have a girlfriend and I have all of these things. And the body of Cyrus with Dennis inside, as they're in this argument, it's like, well, when's the wedding? You have a girlfriend? You don't even like her. You don't even want to marry her. What are you even talking about? And the real Cyrus starts to walk away when all of a sudden, Dennis, in the body of Cyrus, our douchebag, starts spilling the real tea of what happened in the friendship breakup of college. And all of a sudden he says, look, yeah, if you want to know, I was hooking up with Beatrice. We hooked up a bunch of times. This is the sister of Forbes. And yeah, she was still in high school. And the real Cyrus told Nikki, because at that point they were dating. And he goes, you didn't tell her to be a good guy. You told her because you wanted to bang Nikki and break us up. And I know that because when she broke up with me, you asked her out and she obviously said no. And then when you didn't have Nikki, you just looked around the friend group and was like, fine, her, and started dating Paula from White Lotus. So he spills the tea on the whole breakup and why there's weirdness between Nikki and Cyrus and Dennis, and why Paula projects onto Nikki because she knows that her boyfriend is super into her. And Cyrus, in the body of Forbes, is like, you know what? You think you're so cool, like you're this big guy on campus, and what happened to you? Nothing. You're like literally a waste. You don't even have the excuse of having to get a day job or anything because your life is just pathetic and you just live off of your parents' money. And you should be jumping at the opportunity to take over Ruben's body because at least he's done something, and he's done more in the last year than you've done with your entire life, let alone the past 10 years. So they really start railing on each other.
Wow.
Dennis, inside the body of Cyrus, pulls out his phone and hits 911. And they're all like, what are you doing? And he picks up the phone and he goes, this is Cyrus. And I pushed Dennis and Maya off the roof and they're dead. And then he hangs up after he's like, this is the address. Come right now. I did it. I'm Cyrus. I killed them. He then hangs up and he turns to Cyrus in the body of Forbes and he goes, okay, we can switch now. I mean, it's pretty crazy trying to pin the deaths on Cyrus.
Although, how's he going to explain the top? Never mind. I don't. Oh, good.
No, ask me questions.
No, because I was going to say, he's going to be like, I pushed them off the roof, but if the roof collapsed, he's going to be like, and then our cops are going to ask, did you cave in the roof too?
Exactly. I mean, there are definitely questionable things that you can probably argue for your own sanity and being like, it's not true. Look what happened. And like the roof collapsed and they fell. But they're all freaking out in this moment. And as they're all screaming, all of a sudden, they realize, where is Forbes? Like the actual Forbes who's in the body of Ruben. They look over and he's running with the suitcase down a pathway. Nikki the body of Brooke, like literally knocks out, and Brooke being the Sia haircut, knocks him out. They drag him inside, and they're like, we've got to try and get this going before the cops arrive. They're on their way. Cyrus just ruined it with Dennis making the phone call. Paula from White Lotus knows how to use the machine because she had asked him how it worked and what they were doing. But Paula from White Lotus is in Nikki and living her Instagram life and doesn't want to switch bodies. She loves being Nikki. She's like, this is my fresh start. This is my rebirth. I'm now Nikki. And the real Nikki is like, absolutely not. You're jealous of me. You're a loser, though. And they fight. She's like, you don't get to decide if you get to keep my body. And Paula's like, well, guess what? I'm the only one who knows how to use the machine, so I do get to decide.
Paula?
They're all fighting. They're all going crazy. They tie up the body of Ruben, a.k.a. Forbes, and Cyrus in the body of Forbes tries to talk sense into Paula. He pulls her aside and he's like, look, I need to talk to you. And she goes off. She's pissed at him. She wants to stay in the body of Nikki. He finds her in the original glass room. And Paula is sitting there in the body of Nikki. And Maya is sitting there. This is, the girl with the red and black hair. She's in the body of Paula. She's in the room. And she's like, who asked if she's a consolation prize? And this is Paula in the body of Nikki. And he goes, look, I had a crush on Nikki in college. That's true. But I'm in love with you, and I love you now, and I want you to believe me. And she's like, why won't you touch me then? And he's like, well, let's talk about it when we're back in our own bodies. And she's like, no, I want to talk about it now, and I want you to tell me. He's like, I don't know then. I don't know. Are you not attracted to me? He's like, no, I am. Then what is it? And he pauses, and he's like, look, I'm effed up. I watch effed up stuff and I avoid you. I'm a mess. And yes, I think we should talk about it. And I'm going to stop and I'm going to be better and I'm going to pay attention to you. And we see the body of Nikki, the soul of Paula, of course, cry like a single tear. She's crying about it. And he's like, look, I love you so much. I want to be looking at your face when we're having this conversation. I want you to be looking at my face when we have this conversation. And I want you to know that I want to be with you for the rest of our lives. Your face, my face, us together. All of a sudden, we see the body of Paula stand up and is like, wait, quick question. When did you cut yourself in the glass room? Because he mentions when he walks in, he's like, oh, be careful, you might cut yourself. Were you in Ruben's body in round one? And he's like, no, come on, we have to go right now. Not right now. And he's like, turns to Nikki, a.k.a. his Paula. He's like, come on. And she goes, that was you in round one. He's like, Paula from White Lotus, come on. Right now we have to go. And the body of Paula is like, no, it was you. You were trying to hook up with me when I was in Nikki's body. She's like, can you please stop talking? He's like so pissed. He's like, Paula from White Lotus, come on. She's like, you said you were Forbes. And it's like, I'm such an idiot. The real Paula in the body of Nikki's like, I'm such an idiot, and storms out. And Cyrus is like, God damn it. So she storms out. She's crying. He screams at Brooke, who's in the body of Paula. I think I said Maya earlier. Brooke. Sorry. Sometimes it's so confusing with all the
So
bodies.
confusing.
He screams at Brooke, who's in the body of Paula, because, of course, she can't go back to her own dead body. And she follows him and was like, the guy I was in a relationship was married, and I feel like I've reincarnated into Paula from White Lotus's body, and I'm in this new vessel, and I'm here to correct all of our sins. And he's literally like, shut up. Shut up. Meanwhile, Nikki, who is in the body of Maya, who is, of course, remember, the red hair and black haired woman, is like, we've got to figure this out. We need to wake up Forbes because he's the only person on our side now, because obviously the person in me has gone rogue and is trying to steal my body. So they're trying to wake up Forbes when Paula, in the body of Nikki, shows up with like an Instagram hostage video that is like, I will destroy your entire social media if you turn us back. And she's like, you're a psycho. And she's like, they're getting into this argument again about who gets Nikki's body because they're all fighting at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And the body of Nikki tells Cyrus, he's like, we have to go back to our bodies and sort it out, or tell me that deep down you want to be with Nikki. Because at this point, everyone's arguing. Cyrus is like trying to convince the body of, Maya, who has Nikki in it. Like, we all need to figure this out. And Paula starts talking to the real Forbes and is like, what would you do? And he's like, this is what I would do, just if you want to see what the answer is. So she goes to Cyrus, who's in the body of Forbes. I know it's all very confusing. And she goes, look, we can go back into our bodies and we can sort out our relationship. Or you can tell me that deep down you want to be with Nikki and I stay in this body. And you switch into Ruben's body. And you tell everyone in Ruben's body that the wedding is off and that you're running away with your college friend Nikki, that you've had all these feelings for her and that we can be together. And we just really start fresh.
Wow.
And at this point, we're hearing sirens in the distance. Wow, 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 like coming towards them. And she says, you have to make a decision, she says. And he's like, okay, okay, yeah, okay. She goes, okay, what? And he goes, okay, I will go into Ruben's body. So everyone is making these side deals as the cops are approaching. And Nikki, in the body of Brooke, is making deals with the real Forbes. And, they're all trying to make these deals. And she pulls Dennis aside. And she goes, look, here's the thing. Paula is going to be in Paula's body. Cyrus is going to be in Cyrus's body. Forbes is going to be in Forbes's body. Nikki is going to be in Nikki's body. And then Maya will be in Brooke. And Dennis will be in Ruben. And the real Dennis is like, okay, that's not, yeah, okay, fine. And she goes, but that's not what we're actually going to do. What they're really going to do is that Paula's going to stay in my body. She's going to be in Nikki. Cyrus goes in Ruben's body and they run off together. Forbes goes in Forbes. Nikki, I'm stuck in Brooks and you're stuck in Cyrus. You have to take the fall and you go to jail. So now all of a sudden there's like, shifts in the relationships of what we're going to do with these bodies. And all of a sudden they're like, it's us against them. So they're in the room and she's like insisting that Forbes gets to look at the machine. And Nikki leans forward and rubs peanut butter all over the Nikki body. Because remember, we know from the very beginning that she's allergic.
Right.
And the real Nikki is like, I have the EpiPen and I won't use it until Forbes looks at the wiring and we're all in the correct bodies. The cops are knocking at the door. It's like bang, bang, bang. They've got the EpiPen. Dennis is screaming that his funds are now missing. He's looking at his phone. There's tons of chaos. The cops start breaking in. The EpiPen goes into the body of Nikki. All of a sudden, we get a black title card. Coda. We cut to the sister, Beatrice, who we've only seen in photographs up until this point, driving violently in a car with a black eye in a real road rage situation. And they're driving up to Rufia at the wedding site. And it's a crime scene now, Sarah. It's
shit.
And the
Messy.
bride is crying. It's rainy. It's clearly like muddy. And Beatrice goes running up to Forbes, who's just sitting there drinking like a Diet Coke. And Beatrice tackles Forbes to the ground and is like, where's the suitcase? And Forbes, laying on the ground, is like, what are you even doing here? Wait, what? And all of a sudden, Beatrice goes, Dennis? He goes, yeah, wait, what are you doing here? And the Beatrice body goes, I'm actually Forbes and you're in my body.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Wait. Oh my God.
Exactly. So Beatrice, the actual sister who was expelled or like got Forbes kicked out because she was hooking up with Dennis, we later learned like multiple times, and was drunk at the party and like caused a whole scene, was actually in Forbes's body. So now if you remember the very beginning of the movie where we're hearing the wah, 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 and the body just in the reflection closing the case, she obviously swapped with her brother with the plans to come to this event. But Dennis, too, is like, what? And Beatrice, aka the real Forbes, who we have never met at this point, is like, this is all your fault. Don't you remember? And we cut back to Dennis's party. And he's like, yeah, we had hooked up. And he's like, yeah, but you guys had hooked up like 10 times. You were a jerk. She really thought she loved you. You used her and abused her and all these terrible things. She was in high school. You're a senior in college. And you told everyone how she had episodes, and she did. And ultimately, you blew her off and you fed her booze. And you told them it was me and I got expelled. And she told everyone like how you had ruined her life, and she ended up having an episode big enough that they put her into a mental institution and she was under suicide watch. And I went to go and visit her and she wouldn't even see me. And I finally thought, you know what? I'm going to bring the machine and I'm going to try and swap with her so she can see what I've been going through and I can see what she's been going through. But really, she just wanted it to get back at me and to get back at you and to get back at everyone. And Dennis is just like in Forbes, like, what? And he goes, okay, but what happened to everybody? And Dennis in Forbes is like, well, it got crazy. We cut to Cyrus in the body of Cyrus on the other side of glass, obviously arrested for the quote murders.
Right.
And he's talking to Paula of White Lotus. And he's like, I don't even know who is who, and I'm in serious trouble, and I need you to talk to the cops, and you need to explain to them, like, whatever. I just need you to support me. And Paula goes, you know, I don't know if I can. He's like, but you have to. Like, what is going on? Like, who are you? Like, you're acting different. What is going on? Are you mad at me because I was talking about us getting married? And she says, Cyrus, you were really high last night. He's like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And they're like, the bodies got all messed up. We learned that Nikki, our influencer, is now in the body of Ruben, and Maya is in the body of Brooke, and Dennis, was now in the body of Forbes. Forbes, by the way, who was in Dennis's body in the first round, i.e. the sister, transferred all of Dennis's money out. So that was like a blip on the radar. If you remember, the Ruben as Cyrus walks up to him and he closes his phone, and then we see that he transferred all the money to Offshore's account. And the sister body with the real Forbes, who we've never really met, is like, but where's the machine? And we cut to the body of Nikki, our influencer, driving in a convertible with the machine sitting shotgun, a.k.a. Beatrice, who was parlaying as Forbes, is now living the life as the influencer. Sneak attack. And we cut back to the prison where Paula is like, it was a game, it wasn't real. And he's like, but who are you? And she's like, I'm Paula from White Lotus. And he says, prove it. And she says, last night, you said you wanted to spend the rest of your life with me. And we cut to that moment with Cyrus as Forbes saying it to her. And she says, but I didn't believe you because you've been lying our entire relationship. And somebody, Ruben, who was actually Beatrice, not Forbes, came up with a good idea to how to get the truth out of you. And if what you really want is Nikki, which is what you picked, and he's like, no, but you offered that up as you said to pick that. And she's like, I never said that's what I wanted. I asked you, what did you want? And you said you would make it work. And you were telling me you want to marry me, but all you actually want to do is spend the rest of my life in somebody else's body, and that you were going to lie to be with this other figure and not me. And this is on you. And he's like, is this because of the wig? And she's like, what you did was wrong, and you're a shitty person, and you deserve to spend the rest of your miserable existence with a rusty shovel crammed up your ass. So fuck on that, bitch. And she hangs up the call and stands up. And then it cuts to the end.
Wait, the Easter egg.
So the Easter egg, because now one thing, when you go back to look at this moment, it's very visual, but you see almost written out like a graph where all of the jacks for each body go. and there's a letter alongside each side. So 4 on the left and 4 on the bottom. And they're all written like, D for Dennis and P for Paula from White Lotus. And there's one, when you look now, clearly Beatrice was so used to writing B. You can see it's starting of a looped B, and then they write over it in a much darker like shape, almost like a Sharpie F over it. But you can see it stands out so differently than the other letters when you now know to look for it, that it should have been a B for Beatrice, and then realize, oh no, F, and like writes over it.
Deuces.
Little Easter egg. But I thought it was super fun. It's like very trippy. It's hard with their, body swap movies, i.e. Freaky Friday. Can't even wait for the new edition with Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan. I loved it. But so, this is an 8-person body swap. So it gets confusing, but they do such a really good job. There's really fun music cues. It's like totally zany. I highly recommend. So go check this one out. By all means, let me know.
But this is not the kind of movie that you can watch while you're also like messing around on like your phone.
You have to pay attention.
Or like you're half asleep. Like this is a pay attention movie.
Yeah, and I would watch it even again. Now you know sort of everything. I'm sure there's more Easter eggs that kind of unfold over time as you're watching it, but highly recommend. It's What's Inside, currently on Netflix. My sister, Sarah Cunningham, has joined me as my guest. Thank you. You can always leave us feedback, allspoilerrecap@gmail.com. We're